Welcome! Thank you for joining me today. We are here to examine the mathematics of human capital compounding, an exploration into how professional value and earnings evolve over a career. In this presentation, we will perform an objective evaluation of empirical U.S. salary data through the rigorous mathematical lens of continuous compounding and the Rule of 72. By applying these foundational financial principles to human capital, we can better understand the long-term trajectory of career growth and the compounding effects of experience. Let's dive in. Conventional career wisdom is increasingly challenged by three mathematical realities that define the modern workforce. First is the illusion of merit. While a standard 3.5% merit raise is often presented as a reward for performance, it mathematically equates to long-term wage stagnation. When these raises are adjusted for baseline macroeconomic decay, such as inflation and the rising cost of living, real income growth often disappears entirely. Second, we have the loyalty penalty. Modern corporate compensation structures frequently fail to keep pace with the market value of top talent. This creates a mathematical necessity for high performers to exit their organizations periodically. Moving between companies is often the only way to beat the traditional 2-decade compounding cycle and achieve significant salary growth. Finally, the invisible decay highlights the long-term impact of early career velocity. A high velocity early in one's career exponentially impacts terminal wealth. Conversely, slow initial salary compounding delays critical 401k investment cycles, leading to a hidden but substantial reduction in ultimate retirement savings. The mathematical mechanics governing the doubling of capital are best understood through the Rule of 72. This rule provides a simplified estimate of how long an investment or debt requires to double at a fixed annual rate, based on the principles of continuous compounding. Mathematically, it is derived from the natural log of 2, which is approximately 0.693. The calculation is straightforward. To find the approximate number of years to double your money, divide 72 by the annual interest rate. Let's look at how this applies across different financial scenarios. At a 3% rate, which is typical of low inflation, it takes 24 years for capital to double. Increasing the return to 6%, as seen in many conservative portfolios, reduces that time to 12 years. Moving to the historical market average of 8%, we see a doubling period of 9 years. Finally, in an aggressive growth scenario yielding 10%, the time required drops to just 7.2 years. This demonstrates the profound impact that even small percentage increases in annual returns can have on the velocity of wealth accumulation. Mainstream corporate salary budgets are currently structured in a way that inadvertently incentivizes stagnation and employee turnover. When we look at the data, standard merit increases range from just 3.1 to 3.2%, with total salary increase budgets hovering around 3.5%. There is some variation across industries, with healthcare and retail lagging at approximately 3%, while finance and energy lead slightly at 3.7%. However, these figures pale in comparison to the financial gains of leaving a position. While a promotion, which typically only affects about 10% of staff, yields an 8 to 9% increase, those who switch jobs entirely can see salary jumps of 10 to 20% or more. This massive gap creates a significant financial motivation for top talent to seek opportunities externally rather than waiting for incremental growth within their current organization. A standard career path typically requires 2 decades to double a salary. With a modest 3.5% annual raise, it takes approximately 20.6 years for an individual's income to reach that milestone. To put this into perspective, a starting salary of $80,000 in 2026 would not reach $160,000 until roughly 2050. However, by increasing annual growth to 10%, that doubling period is drastically reduced to just 7.2 years. Ultimately, over a 40-year career, an employee who remains in a standard role with average raises will experience exactly 2 doublings of their salary. This stark difference illustrates the significant long-term impact of annual growth rates. Our methodological review has uncovered 3 critical unstated assumptions that fundamentally impact the reliability of the current model. First, let's look at the assumption of fixed baseline inflation, which we have assigned a high severity rating of 8. The model currently relies on a static 2.4% inflation rate. However, rapid macroeconomic shifts would completely invalidate the math used for real wage compounding. Second, the model assumes linear career progression, rated at a 7. The data is built on the premise of uninterrupted, continuous compounding. This ignores the practical realities of most professional paths, such as periods of unemployment, sabbaticals, or lateral moves that naturally disrupt that compounding trajectory. Finally, we identified a significant methodological flaw concerning tax bracket erosion, which we've rated at a 6. The raw calculations fail to account for the reality that crossing into higher tax brackets reduces the net take-home velocity of nominal salary doublings. Collectively, these factors suggest that our baseline projections require significant adjustment to reflect real-world economic conditions. Nominal merit increases often mask the reality of real wage stagnation. As illustrated by the calculation on this slide, a 3.5% nominal raise, when adjusted for a 2.5% inflation rate, results in a real raise of only 1%. The impact of this is significant. At a real growth rate of 0.5 to 1%, an individual's actual purchasing power barely moves. To further understand the erosion of value over time, we can look at the inverse rule of 72. With inflation sustained between 2.4 and 3%, the purchasing power of static cash is effectively cut in half every 24 to 30 years. While nominal figures may suggest financial progress, the underlying economic data shows that real purchasing power remains largely stagnant. Corporate budget structures inherently create what is known as the loyalty penalty. This occurs because organizations typically cap annual merit budgets at approximately 3.5% to maintain cost control. While this strategy manages internal overhead, it mathematically forces ambitious employees to look elsewhere. At a 3.5% growth rate, it takes 20 years for a salary to double. In contrast, the data on wealth optimization is clear. Employees who execute 2 to 3 strategic job switches during their peak earning years consistently earn 20 to 50% more than high-performing loyal stayers. This highlights a fundamental truth in the modern labor market. Internal merit increases cannot compete with external market recalibration. Early career compounding velocity is the primary determinant of your terminal retirement wealth. The relationship between your salary doubling speed and your 401k compounding cycles is fundamental to long-term financial security. Because a standard salary typically doubles only every 20-plus years, failing to save aggressively early on leads to a guaranteed lifestyle plateau. By accelerating your salary doubling speed from 20 years to 7.2 years early in your career, you provide the necessary raw capital to maximize the fixed compounding horizons of your retirement accounts. Ultimately, increasing your income velocity early allows you to leverage time more effectively, ensuring your investments have the runway needed to reach their full potential. The integrated career compounding framework provides a holistic view of how professional earnings and wealth accumulate over time. We begin with the nominal rate, which represents the raw percentage increase in compensation, whether through standard annual raises or strategic market jumps. However, to understand true progress, we must focus on the real rate. This metric represents the actual compounding velocity of wealth after subtracting the baseline inflation metric, reflecting true growth in purchasing power. These financial metrics are inextricably linked to the career stage. This variable indicates the remaining time available for compounding and dictates risk tolerance. Typically, the early stages of a career allow for the highest risk tolerance due to the length of the road ahead. Finally, we have the compounding horizon. This is the fixed temporal limit, specifically the number of years until retirement, that governs the growth of both salary and investments. By understanding the interplay between these 4 pillars, we can more effectively navigate and optimize our long-term financial trajectory. This strategic decision architecture provides a clear framework for allocating your human capital based on compensation performance. We begin at Node 1 by evaluating your current compensation growth. Is your real inflation-adjusted raise greater than 3%? If the answer is yes, the most effective strategy is to stay in your current role and allow your capital to compound. If your raise falls below that 3% threshold, we move to Node 2. Can you secure an internal promotion within the next 12 months? This typically represents an 8 to 9% increase. If this path is available, your objective is to negotiate and secure that advancement. If an internal promotion is not viable, we reach Node 3. In this scenario, the architecture dictates an external job pivot. Moving to a new organization forces a market recalibration of your professional value, which typically yields a significant 10 to 20% jump in compensation. While the continuous compounding model provides a robust framework for career and wealth projections, it is essential to understand its mathematical limits and the edge cases where the model begins to diverge from reality. Starting with extreme rates, we see that standard heuristics like the Rule of 72 lose their predictive power at the margins, specifically at rates under 2% or over 20%. Similarly, the model fails to accurately capture the all-or-nothing nature of startup equity multipliers, which do not follow a linear compounding path. Regarding non-linear compensation, the framework struggles to integrate irregular financial events. It cannot seamlessly account for heavily skewed commission structures or massive one-time executive bonuses, as these represent discrete jumps rather than smooth, continuous growth. In the context of late career plateaus, the continuous compounding assumption often breaks down. As professionals reach the peak of their respective fields, market ceilings frequently cap absolute salary growth. At this stage, growth tends to level off regardless of job switching or performance, effectively hitting a ceiling that the model does not inherently predict. Lastly, we must consider tax and fee erosion. The basic logarithmic model often overlooks the significant dampening effects of shifting into higher tax brackets or the cumulative impact of portfolio withdrawal fees. These real-world frictions can drastically reduce the actual realized value compared to what is suggested by theoretical models. To optimize continuous compounding, we will follow 3 core operational imperatives that prioritize long-term wealth over short-term perceptions. First, we must reject nominal framing. It is essential to calculate compensation velocity strictly through real inflation-adjusted rates to avoid the illusion of growth. Relying on nominal figures can mask the actual erosion of purchasing power, so focusing on real returns ensures our financial trajectory is grounded in actual economic value. Second, we need to engineer compounding velocity early. The objective is to compress the standard 20-year doubling cycle into a 7-year cycle during the first decade of professional work. By accelerating growth early, we maximize the impact of downstream retirement investments, allowing the power of compounding to work on a larger capital base for a longer duration. Finally, we must treat loyalty as a mathematical liability. Standard corporate budgets are often mathematically designed to enforce slow wealth building through marginal incremental raises. To counter this, strategic external pivots are necessary to force market recalibration. Moving strategically ensures compensation remains aligned with current market value rather than being suppressed by internal budgetary constraints. The methodological foundation of our analysis is built upon rigorous mathematical constraints and high-quality empirical data. Our calculations are grounded in the mathematics of continuous compounding, specifically utilizing the natural logarithm of 2, approximately 0.693, to ensure technical accuracy. For data aggregation, we have synthesized salary baseline metrics from organizational survey data collected for the 2025 to 2026 period. This robust dataset covers more than 1,000 corporations, providing a comprehensive view of the market landscape. Our primary sources include industry-leading organizations such as Mercer, the Society for Human Resource Management, Willis Towers Watson, the Conference Board, and PayScale. By leveraging these diverse and reputable data streams, we have established a highly reliable basis for our conclusions.